Hi, everybody on the north side of town. I'm documenting some situations I've been going through lately. This is an isolated event. It doesn't concern my former roommate, Jason. This concerns another roommate whose name I'm not going to mention. I will say his initials are S.A. He was a Canadian national who crossed the border in his youth, which I'm assuming is somewhere between 7 and 14 years old. He crossed the border with his mother from Canada, and she is illiterate and did not have the proper birth certificates or paperwork to be in this country, and yet she risked her life and his life to come here. In other words, she didn't do it legally. They must have ended up somewhere on the East Coast because in approximately 2010, when he had lived through his formative years, his teenage years, and some of his adult years, well, when he was between the ages of 30 and 35, he decided to buy large amounts of cocaine and distribute it as an undocumented worker and an illegal resident. He was caught and he was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison with the consequence of deportation. Well, guess what? The feds couldn't deport him because he had no proof of birth in Canada and he had no proof of birth in Jamaica. They went through the Florida consulate and nothing was discovered. They went to the Canadian government directly and he was untraceable. So he was in federal custody from at least 2010 to 2020 in Massachusetts, Florida, Massachusetts, Georgia, Louisiana, and Alabama. I don't know why they kept moving him around. But during COVID, he tried to sue the local government or the state of Louisiana for not having sanitary conditions in the jail or federal prison cell. The report or the court case acknowledged that they had all kinds of sprays that were disinfectant, that they took the prisoners' temperature every day and checked on their well-being on a daily basis. But apparently it wasn't good enough for him and the 13 other plaintiffs. He lost the case, and part of the reason was he would not cooperate with the federal government in revealing his past. In other words, giving them more information so they could deport him. Fast forward several years. He got out of prison in 2020. I don't know what he did between that and now, but he's managed to make his way to Duluth, Minnesota, and sweet talk a former employee at TBI who was a nurse and manipulate her as well, I'm pretty sure. So they're in this relationship even though she has no public PDA, no public display of his existence on her Facebook channel. And so I was leaving for a trip December 7th, and I advertised on Facebook Marketplace that I needed a roommate by January 1st. Not December 7th, but January 1st. She called me on December 5th and begged me to take this stranger in, S.A. She begged me to take him in because he didn't have anywhere to go. He was living in a hotel and it was too expensive. I had one day to decide, and I also had to work at a school that day from 8 to 4. And I did it after an overnight job, so I worked 16 hours straight. And then I agreed to let him move in and then do all the legwork when I got back, which would have included a background check and some other stuff. So, okay, he moved, and then they're like, we just want a place for him to live. He just wants the back bedroom. He won't be any trouble. Well, I was out of town from December 7th to a later date in December, and almost 2 weeks, not quite. I came back before Christmas, and I found out he had been bugging my landlord. He threw out my bathtub stopper. He cleaned the house and threw out other things I couldn't find. He bugged my landlord about this thing needs to be cleaned and that thing needs to be cleaned, and please paint my bedroom, and it's too cold in here, turn the heat up. He did, and then he told her he was going to fix up my living room, which he did not rent. He did not rent this portion of the apartment. So I come back, my bathtub stopper's missing, and I told him to replace it, and I showed him a picture of what type of device I needed to stop the bathtub water. Then the landlords had cleaned his carpet and the hallway, even though he created 2 more dirt spots, a big black mark in the hallway, either carrying things in or out. I had loaned him my airbed, but once again, that wasn't good enough for him. So he put my airbed in the side of the room and put a bunch of heavy luggages on it, on an airbed. And then he bought himself his own airbed. Then I was back around December 21st, and then every time I was in the apartment or at my computer, he would ask me, he would talk about cleaning supplies and cleaning. And one night he came home at 2:30 in the morning, and I was up at my computer because I couldn't sleep, and he started asking me about rats and mice. I said, there's no mice in the house. There was one this summer, and my son exterminated it. Then I told him 2 days later, could you not leave the lights on all the time? He left the bathroom light on that has these fancy bulbs that are very particular to that light exchange. He left the kitchen light on, that light, and my hallway light in the outside of the apartment door on for 3 nights in a row. I said, just a reminder to remember to turn the lights off when you leave. Then he went into a tirade. He said that I'm immature and how dare I bother him about little things, and he just lost a father and it's childish. Well, I'm paying the light bill. So I don't want 3 lights on every time he leaves the apartment, and sometimes for days on end. So it was just really, even when I was just quiet and on the download, he would find something to nag about or address. He violated the lease then, and because of his attitude towards me regarding the lights, I said, you know what? It was a temporary lease. You can move out. He said, okay, I'll move out February 14th in 2 weeks. So then I'm at work one night and I Googled his name, and I found out he was on the run from Homeland Security. He was he did come here as a Canadian illegal immigrant, but he stayed and broke the law. Him and his mother stayed. I'm sure he had no control over that as a child. But then he became a big time felon criminal by, like selling drugs that are of substantial problems. To make a long story short, I found out my landlord does not allow any felons in the building. So if you have a criminal record like my previous roommate, Jason W.A., they're gone. It's intolerable. And him and his girlfriend lied when they first got here. He gave me his birthday and he said he's never broken the law ever, that he's a clean slate. Well, I lived in Los Angeles for years. I lived in the city of San Fernando in a resident one time for 6 to 8 months where there were illegals in the garage. I was inundated with illegals, and I'm cool with it because in California, there's a huge percentage of people who are illegal. What I'm upset about here is that he lied, and his girlfriend told me that I can't live with him because the relationship is too new. They've been together for 6 months, and she wouldn't take him in as a tenant because she was getting a new fancy condo in Woodland, and she didn't want the risk of his name and his illegal status to be on her lease. So instead, she lies and pawns him off on me. And I didn't even want a roommate till January. I wanted to fix the place up and reorganize the bedroom that was empty and, like things like that. And they imposed themselves on me. I accepted their imposition under certain conditions, which he violated right off the bat. So the moral of the story is I've been a police informant for 2 years in Duluth. I had to try to get my old roommate out of here because he had 3 open warrants that he lied about too. He committed 2 crimes while living on my property. One was stealing from Super One, where my landlord works, and the other one was dealing drugs and collecting drugs. He had over 130 pills, gabapentin, in his room. And my neighbor Jordan also saw him dealing drugs outside and using. And he was technically on probation. He was a fugitive of the law, my other roommate. And he had warrants in Crow Wing, Carlton, and Duluth. Open warrants, violation of bail, things of that nature, failure to appear in court. But the police in Duluth don't do anything major with these people unless the bail is $1,000 or more. So if you commit a crime in Duluth and your bail's only like 100 for shoplifting, or even 500 for maybe like burglary or trespassing, the only way that those citizens who commit crimes are going to get caught is if a police stops them right on the street. And they would not come to my apartment to arrest him because they thought he was a risk of violence. So I'm just saying, next time, if I ever get a roommate again, I'm doing a background check, not only for local crimes, but for federal crimes and terrorist action. This person is no longer in my life. He heeded the warning that I knew about his background and he moved out. And I'm hoping I never hear from him and his girlfriend again.